Welcome everybody. I'm glad everybody's here. Unfortunately, I don't see our president here yet, so we're going to start, and she'll probably come in soon. Again, thank you all for being here. As most of you know, tonight is the first of a series of educational forums that Body of Hollywood is sponsoring regarding issues our neighborhood faces, namely the onslaught of gentrification and potential threat of involuntary displacement of our residents. We believe that the attempted sale of the historic Trinity Alvarez El Rio golf course by the city and the subsequent victory of Body of Hollywood and other neighborhoods that supported us might provide some insight for our future battles that we're going to be facing. And we've invited three very notable people here to lead this forum. Number one is Sal Baldenegro, standing back there. Sal was born in the border mining town of Douglas, Arizona. And as an infant, his family moved to Body of Hollywood, where he grew up during the 1950s and 60s. Sal lived in Hollywood on Niagara Street, where some of us live, great street.
Right across from, as a matter of fact. Near
Cuesta, and until the 1970s. In spirit and in action, Sal has never left our neighborhood. In the early 1970s, Sal played a leadership role in the El Rio for People movement that created the center we're in today, the El Rio Neighborhood Center, as well as the creation of Joaquin Murrieta Park. He was arrested twice during that struggle for our neighborhood. The movement he was a part of pioneered the community policing concept in Tucson that helped convince the Tucson Police Department to establish satellite offices in the barrio and have culture-friendly Spanish-speaking cops and staff. Those satellite offices was called Adam 1. It was a very unique thing that happened. He also worked with people who did business in the barrio to get them to hire people from the barrio. Sal attended El Rio, now Monzo Elementary School, and then John Spring, and then Tucson High, and then the U of A. He quit the U of A in the late 1960s to become a full-time organizer for the Mexican-American Chicano Civil Rights Movement for a stipend of $5 a week.
Wow.
The historic movement, which created immense changes in the educational, political, and economic arenas in Tucson, was based in Barrio Hollywood, first in the Chicano House on Niagara Street, then in Centro Chicano on Erie Street, and then in Centro Chicano on Melrose Avenue, the old Harry Lee Market between Niagara and St. Clair Street. Sal was appointed the Director of Special Services for Disadvantaged Students at Pima College, and then was appointed the Executive Director of the nonprofit Youth Development Incorporation, which was based in Hollywood. Sal was appointed Assistant Dean of Students at the U of A, from where he retired in 2006. Sal, along with his wife, Ceci Cruz, successfully advocated getting the city to pave Hollywood streets. So besides thanking them for the center, thank them for having paved streets and install sidewalks and streetlights. Sal is the founding chairperson of the Operations Committee here at El Rio and served several terms as president of the Western Little League Board based in Joaquin Murrieta Park, where Sal and Ceci's sons played baseball. Cecilia Cruz Baldenegro was born in the mining town of Winkleman, Arizona, to a strong independent migrant woman from Mexico and an Arizona-born copper smelter worker and union organizer. Ceci's Tucson roots are in Barrio Hollywood, where she came to Tucson in 1966 on a scholarship to the U of A and became active in social causes. Her first job after leaving the U of A was with the War on Poverty Initiative, the Model Cities program, which sought to empower low-income neighborhoods, including Barrio Hollywood. During this time, Cecilia lived on Erie Street, where she met her husband Sal, a lifelong resident of Barrio Hollywood and a leader of the Civil Rights Chicano movement and the El Rio for People cause. Ceci's house was the headquarters of the historic Chicano movement. Cecilia's family has been very involved with the West Side, in particular Barrio Hollywood, for decades. She served on the Operations Committee here at El Rio, where El Rio for the People movement was created. She served several terms in the Western Little League Board and served as a coach and board member of the Aztec Soccer Club. Most recently, in 2013, Cecilia, along with Sal, started and led the El Rio II movement, the effort to save the Trinity Alvarez El Rio Municipal Golf Course from being given away for a for-profit religious organization, which would have inevitably generated massive gentrification and displacement of Barrio Hollywood residents. Cecilia was the plaintiff against the city of Tucson, which forced City Hall to release public documents associated with the shady deal to give away El Rio to developers. It was primarily the organizing efforts which ultimately stopped this project. As Cecilia states, quote, "The fight then, as the fight now, is about barrio self-determination, governmental transparency, a fight for the environment, and helping to keep a valuable and healthy green public space for our community." Third person is Bill Risner, sitting right over there. He calls himself a Kentucky Cherokee hillbilly who has gone Sonora native since 1951. But he's a lot more than that. Bill has practiced law in Tucson for the past 50 years with a ferocity unmatched by other local lawyers. During the entirety of Bill's 50 years as a lawyer, he has represented persons and groups involved in public issues concerning our community, state, and nation, including his representation and defense of Father Quinones in the sanctuary trial here in Tucson, which defended the rights of immigrants and their supporters. Bill and his law partners at the then firm of Risner, Wolf, and Raven represented the Rio Coalition and various persons in the 1970 protests and arrests. He and his office of Risner and Graham now once again played a pivotal role in protecting Barrio Hollywood by representing the Rio Coalition 2 during its recent struggle. Bill's efforts included filing the public record lawsuit by Ceci Cruz, which was won in court, proving that it's possible to actually beat City Hall. Many of the details of the city deal with Grand Canyon University would never be known today without the efforts of these three individuals. Barrio Hollywood is honored to have these three important guests and friends here today. Please let's give them a hearty welcome. We're going to start with Sal. Do you want to talk first, or do you want to show the? We do have a slide presentation.
Yeah, but I want to say a couple of things first, though. First of all, I'm really proud to be from Hollywood. When people ask me where I'm from, I always say Barrio Hollywood. And back there, a whole bunch of veteranos like me, we all grew up together here in the streets. Barrio Hollywood, people don't know this, is the third oldest barrio in Tucson. The first, the downtown ones, of course, which were destroyed by the community center, and then Barrio Anita, and then Hollywood. Now, people always ask me how Hollywood got its name. Now, there's a bunch of theories, but here's my theory. Here's the one I subscribe to, is that back in the 30s and 40s, like 1940, Western movies were being made here in Tucson. Ronald Reagan, William Holden, Tom Mix, Roy Rogers, those guys. You guys are too young for this. You probably don't remember these names. But they were making movies here. And, eventually, Old Tucson built around that. And they hired extras. They wanted people who looked like Mexicans or Indians. So they hired people from this area. So people started saying that they were movie stars and they were from Hollywood. And eventually there's a bunch of other theories, but that's the one that's most credible. I researched it, and I think that's most credible.
Sal, I was told it was because all the women are so beautiful.
That's the other theory. That's the other theory, that they're all Hollywood beauties. All the Hollywood beauties lived here. The third thing I want to mention, make sure I say, is that the civil rights movement, the Chicano civil rights movement, which moved mountains, did immense good for this community, I'm proud to say was based in Hollywood. Now, I can't talk about that because it'll take 2 hours, but I just want to mention that the civil rights movement that we led was based here in Hollywood, which something should be a pride to those of us who are from here. The other thing is that the neighborhood empowerment movement that you are part of also came out of Hollywood. That came directly from the El Rio for the People movement that we're going to see the slides from. And then over the years, Hollywood has produced some great people, outstanding people. We've produced teachers, administrators, city workers, business people like Frank Pisquet and those people, journalists. Matter of fact, the first Mexican Americans in the country to receive a Pulitzer Prize in journalism were from Hollywood. Frank Sotomayor and Jose Galvez. El primo del Güero Galvez. So we've produced some great people from Hollywood. Something I'm really, really proud of. Okay, that's what I want to say. I want to make sure I said those things before so I don't forget them. Okay, now we go to the slideshow. Now the El Rio for the People movement was a defining moment in Tucson history. By that I mean that it changed, that movement permanently changed the whole political dynamic of Tucson. And the slides of the first 6 slides are just people. Just pictures of people like that one. And the reason I'm doing that is because the city council, well, first of all, I should tell you how it started. That movement started because back in the 1960s, again, most of you are probably too young to remember this, the parties didn't run in candidates, they ran slates. So when you went to go vote, you could just pull one lever and vote for all the Democrats, all the Republicans. Well, back in '67, the Democratic slate came to Hollywood to ask for support. And a bunch of people, including myself, I was in high school then, I was in high school. No, I think I was in college. I just graduated from high school. And we met with a slate, and one of the things that we said was that we need a park. Because back in my day, as you remember, Frank, and Irma, the streets were not paved then. There was no pavement, no sidewalks. We played in the empty lots, or in the streets, or we went to Menlo Park or Ori. Anyway, we said we want a park. They said, fine, if you help us get elected, we'll get you a park. Well, we got them elected, we worked real hard for them. They went back on their word and said they didn't remember making that commitment to us. So we went back and forth, we did petitions, phone calls, meetings, nothing worked. So we finally decided to start protesting. And that's what gave rise to this movement. So the city council people and the newspapers try to brand us as a bunch of young, they call us communists, socialists. One councilman called us wannabe brown hippies. And they called us outsiders. They said we were a bunch of young radical outsiders. Although we lived here, but here's the real backbone of that movement. The real backbone were these people right here. That's Victoria Fimbres, who lived in Niagara and Cuesta, right by my house. Maria Shafino lived in Huron. Now we were in our 20s. I was in my 20s. So these were old folks to us. We call them los viejitos. Sacramento Rodriguez, she lived in Barrio Anita, but she had relatives here, she had a sister who lived here. Now she played a huge role. When you see the pictures later on, when we took over the golf course, she's responsible. The first march we had, we were going to march and rally in the parking lot, which is right here. This is the parking lot right here. And then go home. But she said, I'm tired of speeches, I'm tired of talking. Let's go see our park. So she walked into the golf course, and everybody followed her. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And that's how we took over the golf course. Next one. That's El Toro. Frank Miranda lived right across the street here, right across the street here. Frank Miranda. Josefina Noriega lived in Silver Bell. Patsy Walker lived right by Johnny's Market over here, right around the corner here. Camilo Rutia, who also lived right behind the golf course. Alberto Sanchez lived in Ontario, in Cuesta, more or less. El Mundo Cardenas right there. He lived in Delaware right east of Grande. Margaret Baker, I forget where she lived. I think she lived in Cherokee. That's not, there were young people. There's Frankie Wood, and that's John Diaz. Frankie was a garbage collector, and John was a medical student in the UA Medical School. Mm-hmm. Now, that is on Cuesta and Melrose, August 26th, 1970. That's when we marched. That's the time that we were supposed to march, rally, and go home, but we didn't. Now look who's leading the march. Look, these are young kids. And we did it on purpose because we were fighting for a park for the kids. So you can see that that's Jorge Villarreal, who led the Brown Berets, did the security for us. Next. No, go back to the other one. The one before that. Yeah, they're right there. See again, see the kids? But see, something else I love this picture because look at how much the gas costs. 24 cents. Can you believe that, 24 cents? But anyway, see how Frankie Menes, who's a part of this, of the association, is in those pictures. He's on the bike somewhere. He's one of these guys right here. But anyway, we purposely had the kids lead the marches because we were fighting for the kids. Okay. And again, and that's when we took over the park. The first time. We just swarmed onto the golf course. It was about something like 700 of us in the march, in the first march.
That's a lot of outside agitators. So.
Yeah, and there were 90% of those people were from Hollywood or El Rio, and some from Barronita and Barrio Pascua. That's us taking over the golf course. This guy, this guy didn't give a shit. He kept on playing. He just kept on playing. As opposed to the next guy. No, this guy just sat down. Just sat down. Now this is a real good picture because, as I said, we played in the street. We played in the dirt. Now they're playing real grass. It's like a big tree. Things that some kids take for granted was for our kids a big deal. Oh, this one has no real significance except for one thing. You know how today everybody walks around with a water bottle? Well, back in our day, we carried canteens. That's Fidel Gomez, Reverend Gomez from Pascua. But check out, he brought his own canteen. There were no water bottles then. That's Ed Morgan, attorney. I'm on your way, Bill, I'm sorry. Go ahead. After a while, after the first 3 times we took over the golf course, we were met with these guys. And we couldn't take it over anymore. Good. But we were cool, we tried to feed them, see? We actually gave them food. And believe it or not, some took the food. Now that's the first time I got arrested. That's Jose Despron, myself. Those of you who went to the clubhouse at the Rio golf course, where we were last Friday, well, right where the bar is, where you order, is where we got arrested. And the reason we got arrested was because we were integrating the clubhouse. See, back in those days, well, originally El Rio was a country club, a private country club. But it had a very rich history, though. It was the only country club that allowed Jews, Mexicans, and blacks to play. But it was still a country club, it was private. So then the city bought it. So then we said, well, it's a city-owned facility, we should be able to go eat there, or drink coffee or whatever, right? They said, no, you can't. And we said, why not? He said, because you're not golfers. We said, I don't care, we're Tucson citizens, we're taxpayers. And they said they still wouldn't service. So we went and just took over the golf course, the clubhouse, sat in there, they wouldn't service. So John Diaz, the medical student I mentioned earlier, he went and got the coffee pot, just served us coffee. And they called the cops, and the chief of police himself, Chief Wilkinson, came down and had us arrested. And that's when we had just gotten released. There's a picture there.
Come on over here, watch your feet. There's cords over here. Come on, get some chairs.
How you doing?
Very careful. There's another
Where you are.
right there too. How you doing?
Is there any water anywhere?
You want these guys? Rick.
Sal, were DuckTales in fashion back then?
Pardon me? Yeah. Yeah, the waterfalls too.
I have to say that.
Waterfalls, that's what they're called?
Yeah. That's a, go ahead. That's the second time I got arrested right there. That's me, that's my kid
You're
brother,
practicing wrestling or something.
and that's my kid brother Martin. And believe it or not, he started off the day with a shirt. And to this day, I asked him the other day how he lost his shirt. He has no idea. But we both got arrested. That's me, and that's my brother Martin. That's the second time we got arrested. And then about December, we were going to take over the golf course anyway. But then we talked to the city manager, and he gave us permission to have a Christmas party. So we got Santa to come out. We got the merchants to give toys and food. We had a great party on Christmas.
Yeah, you want to come in?
I'm sorry. Now, one of the things we did, I forgot to mention, when we got arrested, we had a whole bunch of good lawyers with us who all went to bat for us and got us out. Bill Rice was one of them. Mark Raven, Bill Messing, Ed Morgan, and Octavio Marquez. Was there more or less the 5 or 6 lawyers? Oh, thank you very much. Those getting very dry. So we had a bunch of real good lawyers. Now, one of the things that we did at the Centro Chicano, because we knew our community, is we had religious services twice a week right at the Centro Chicano there. That is John Fife, Reverend Fife, Presbyterian, and that is the late John Shaughnessy, Catholic priest from the Inner City Apostolate. And these are some of there was about 5 rows behind us too. People from the neighborhood who came to Mass there twice a week. That's a Centro Chicano right on Melrose between Niagara and St. Clair. And you old timers remember the Heritage Market. The Heritage Market. Okay, go ahead.
What was the issue with the prisoners in Florence?
Oh, we were doing some prison reform stuff where back in those times, prisoners were not allowed to have face-to-face visits with their moms, or their wives, or whoever. And that's the main issue we're fighting. Is that
We won't throw anything away.
see some of the women were mothers of people in Florence, and they couldn't go visit their sons face-to-face. That's what that was. Now this is on Speedway, right here on Speedway. We camped out overnight. That's a sheet that we laid that we attached to the fence and played movies all night. And the people across the street lent us electricity. So we had a bunch of extension cords. And we did one of those, remember those 2-reel things? Those old style. So we camped out there all night twice. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I show this to show that we picketed in the summer when it's 110 degrees, but we also picketed when it's raining. They didn't stop us at all. We picketed in the sunshine, when it was cloudy, when it was raining. Every Saturday. Mind you, every Saturday from August to December. We didn't miss a single Saturday. There was at least 50 of us, 30 of us out there picketing every Saturday. That's in the clubhouse that we were in last week. And for the mayor Corbett, James Corbett, The cops wouldn't let us in. The El Rio Golf, they had the cops. Well, you saw the cops earlier. So what we did, we took over the street. We just partied. I mean, there was 500 of us. Between Cuesta and Grande, we just took over the street. So Gilkinson, the chief of police, came out, and then he called the mayor. So the mayor came out. That's him right there. And you see, that's Friday Gomez from Pascua, Reverend Gomez. That's Willie Wood, Frankie's brother. Myself, Alberto Sanchez. That's Frankie Wood. And I think that's Johnny Brito. Anyway, the mayor came out, and we negotiated that he would let us come into the golf course if we stopped blocking the street. So we did. Now, the next thing I want to mention is that we had a bunch of spiritual support. We had a lot of reverends. We had lawyers with us, I mentioned earlier. Now this is we also had spiritual support. This is Manuel Valencia, the spiritual leader from Pascua Yaqui, from Old Pascua. So he said prayers in Yaqui for us. That is Father Ricardo Alford, Catholic, and that's Richard Cantrell, Episcopalian, and that's Manuel Davila, Methodist. Next. That's Richard Cantrell. Next. That's John Fife, Reverend Fife, Reverend Manuel Davila. And that's Reverend Michael Fowler from All Saints and All Angels. So the point I'm making here is that we had a lot of, well, and somewhere in the mix, I couldn't find their pictures, was Rabbi Joseph Tannenbaum and Reverend Dave Scholden from St. Mark's Presbyterian. So the point I'm making with those is that to buttress the city's contention that we were just a bunch of young, angry, socialist, communist, brown hippies, this showed the kind of support that we had, which is why we won. We had brought, I mean, every Saturday, we had 200-300 people out there for 5 months. Just imagine that for a minute. Trying to get people come out every single Saturday for 5 months. And like that, see? And finally, the city got to see that that this was a real movement. See, they did a survey. The city did a survey because they wanted to prove us wrong. They had this notion that they were going to prove that the Valle people did not support us. Well, they did. They went door to door, hit every single house, and then they wouldn't release the findings. They refused to release the findings. But what they didn't know was that a whole lot of Valle Hollywood people worked for City Hall, in City Hall, and we got the report. We got the report. 90% of the people surveyed supported what we were doing. 90%. And that's when things started to change all of a sudden. But believe it or not, you know who changed what really changed the whole perspective was the Democratic paper, the Arizona Daily Star, was opposing us from day one. They demonized us tremendously. Sorry. It's okay. And then the Tucson Citizen, in those days known as the Tucson Daily Citizen, came out to the barrio, met with us, did a huge spread on us, and did something that is very rarely done. They had 2 front-page editorials supporting us, one in English, one in Spanish. And that started to change the perception that because there were Republicans, conservative Republicans, who were saying that we were decent people, that we were doing the right thing, and that we merited support. And after that, the city started to meet with us. We negotiated, went back and forth. They proposed having this center on Grande and St. Mary's. We said no. They proposed taking the whole block on Ontario between Cuesta in Melrose, but they would have torn down all those houses. We said no. So we went back and forth, and we kept insisting it had to be part of the golf course. So we got this. I mean, symbolically to us it was important that it be here. This was the old parking lot. So that's, anyway, that's the history of this movement, how this center came to be. And then, just last night, the architect of the center had a party, 50th anniversary. Now the reason, and I was invited, the reason we were invited, Ceci and I, is because we insisted that we be part of the planning of the center. And the city fought us on that too, but then we finally won. And we sat on the committee that interviewed the architects. The community planned it out. We said, we want this, we want this, we want this. And that's how we planned the center. And then from here, we leapfrogged and built El Pueblo neighborhood center. And then we leapfrogged from there to build a mountain. And then Northwest, which is now the Higgins Center, Higgins. And then from there to a mountain. So this center here, that movement, started off the whole chain of events that led to all the centers being built. And that's why those of you who are from Hollywood should be very proud. I am. I'm extremely proud of being from Hollywood. It's my home. It's my home. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Now, fast forward 45 plus years with El Rio. And from this history that Sal gave you, you can understand why El Rio is so important to this community. I mean, it is a historical significance. It's with pride that El Rio still exists. And though we were promised to have a park, and that never came to fruition other than the park was then built Joaquin Murrieta, there was peace in the community, keeping the golf course, because it was a beautiful space where many of the local residents, like with Sal's generation, grew up being caddies for these golfers, and ultimately they became golfers too. So the Mexican-American community from here also has enjoyed the golf course. So there was no beef. We all lived and coexisted very happily. And then fast forward, like I said, 45 years later, we get the Arizona Daily Star report something that kind of shook us all to our core, and that was that the city of Tucson had offered this golf course to Grand Canyon University. And it really came as a big shock, and I'll tell you why it came as a big shock, because I'm going to read it sort of as a chronology, because my memory is not as good as Sal's, and I'm also not as long-winded. So on January the 6th, 2013, Councilmember Romero hosted a meeting at the El Rio Neighborhood Center right here, stating the purpose for the meeting was to find a way to keep El Rio open, to keep the golf course open, right? Because there had been some rumblings about how City Golf was losing money. And it was. And El Rio was kind of targeted because it was losing, it was in the red. Now, I can go into the many issues and the many factors that did put El Rio in the red. One of them is that they were charged for water at a higher rate than any other golf course. And they no longer had the driving range because of the first tee, which is really a great program for kids, but it lost revenue because it no longer had the tee. And those were some of the two most important facts and why it wasn't making money. So they were looked at. Golf courses were being looked at. And so this meeting that came about, there was a lot of community participation. The golfers came and community members came. And we were real pleased to, because this meeting was promoted and flyers went out and emails went out that it was a meeting to complete the dream. Now, what did that mean to all us El Rio people? Complete the dream, that park. El Rio is going to be a park. And they had staff there from City Parks and Recreation. They gave some beautiful presentations, some great, prints of the golf course. So, but it also pitted those of us who thought indeed completing the dream meant a city park, and the golfers who wanted to keep El Rio as a golf course. So there was that conflict, and that conflict was used against us later on. But you know, we thought, that's great. Well, let's see what's going to evolve from this meeting. This was one of the things. So besides the June, and this was in January the 16th, 2013. Then again on March 13, 2013, Romero was in attendance at a reorganizing meeting of the El Rio neighborhood. And people were discussing issues with their neighborhood and some of the things that was impacting the El Rio neighborhood. Sal and I happened to be at that meeting because we were invited to attend. And at that meeting, Romero made an off-the-cuff remark. She said that, oh, just one day in passing, I passed City Manager Gutierrez, and he said a comment about GCU being interested in El Rio. Okay, but that was it. There was no more discussion. We didn't hear anything else. And thought, okay, well, you know, we're still fulfilling the dream. We're still going to get the dream. Then on March 21st, 2013, again, a meeting was held here at the center again, and staff from Parks and Recreation came, and they were saying that they were starting the master planning effort for Joaquin Murrieta Park. And that input was, you know, they were soliciting input. So many of the people were there, and they expressed, you know, that what they wanted for the park, but they also said, you know, thinking back to completing the dream, what about connectivity to El Rio Golf Course? Thinking, oh, big major park, we get a Joaquin Murrieta, we get the golf course, big park, as the biggest park, in the words of Trump, the biggest park in the world. So we were very happy and thinking, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Okay, but nothing was said about GCU, nothing. Okay. We go back a month. Then on April 29th, 2013, Romero has a meeting with 4 golfers, some I think from the Mexican American Golfing Association. And they're asking, wait a minute, what's going to happen to the golf course? They're talking park, we're thinking it's a golf course. She met with them, whatever discussion they had, but never ever mentioned GCU. Okay, April 30th, there was a meeting here at that was to present the concept plan that they had for Joaquin Murrieta. A lot of people attended, a lot of people from the foothills area, from around, because of course we're still thinking, great, this is going to be a regional park, a great center. And they asked, I think Scott was there in attendance, as were Prunella, and they were asking very pointed questions about, you know, completing the dream. And still staff was silent. This is in April, mind you, April the 30th, the last day in April. Then on May 8th, that article hits in the newspaper, the Arizona Daily Star, that GCU was trying to get a hold of El Rio, and that it had been offered by the city. Regina Romero was quoted as being one of the people making this deal. Okay? So boy, at that time, I said, what the heck is going on, as many of us did. So one of the things that came to mind immediately, because I had been working with Seafair, and that was an organization trying to get transparency and accountability for Pima College. And one of the things that they did was they filed a public records request. That is to open up your books, people, we want to see what you're up to get records and information. So following that, I said, I got to get a public records request to find out what's going on. So I submitted that on May 13th, 2013. This really started that El Rio Coalition 2. And we took the name El Rio Coalition 2, of course, because of the fine work that had happened before with the El Rio Coalition, the fight for the people. So it was that would be the name. And that also Bill Risner came back into the fold with the coalition, because he had fought so hard, of course, for El Rio before, and now here it was once again. The coalition, the few people started the coalition, and those people, some of them are here today. That was Scott and Prunella, Jean and Raul Ramirez, Margaret McKenna, Miguel Ortega, Anthony Peralta, Tina Pacheco, Joan Leonetti, Sal, and myself. And this core group really stayed with this effort and this fight for the 5 years that it has taken. But so they were really, I mean, this was the heart and the brains beside of what we did. And so one of the first things that we found out after the May 8th article was that there had been a recommendation that was approved unanimously by the mayor and council. And I want to read to you that unanimously approved recommendation. And that was to immediately develop a plan including programming and land use for the El Rio Golf Course, which would transform the golf course from a typical golf enterprise asset to a family golf learning center and park as a general fund parks and recreation activity. The concept would be to retain the first tee program and consider other programming to allow golf and park activities that were more accessible to families, youth groups, kidco, schools, beginning golfers, and player development for future golfers. Now, does that read GCU to any of you? No. So this was in October. The meetings were in January. And we didn't find nothing about this deal, this plan, until May. So again, you know, some of you have worked with mayor and councils, and again, this was the same lie that was back in the 60s with the first El Rio, when Mayor Corbett and his ilk of city council people said, yeah, park, good, bye-bye. So it was like a repeating all over again. Now the coalition, like I said, the core people who started this grew to 25 plus neighborhood association, neighborhood organizations, community organizations, and that list, and I'm just going to give you a few just as a sampling, included Barrio Hollywood, West University, Miramonte Neighborhood Association, Latin American Golf Course Association, the United Steelworkers, Local 937, Tucson Clean and Beautiful, La Capilla San Cosme, as well as city elected officials in the past, which were Sally Gonzalez, Macario Saldate, and Bruce Wheeler. So the coalition, I mean, it grew, it was big. And the reason is that other neighborhood associations had also encountered problems with the particular city not listening to the community, not taking into account their input, going ahead and pursuing development at the cost of neighborhoods and the cost of, you know, community peace and pride. So that really stimulated a lot of people, and they saw a beautiful green space and the potential for a park. So, I mean, we had a lot of people that were involved. The coalition was relatable to many because of the purpose of the coalition, and I want to make it very clear as to what the purpose of the coalition was. And that was not just so the neighborhood would get a park. It really wasn't, because in the meetings that we had, as a coalition had many meetings that the golfers came to, other community people came to really develop a mission and a purpose for the coalition. And that was that what we wanted was the mayor and council to honor their commitment, their vote of October 23rd for that they proposed, to form that family golf park and learning center. 2, to protect a public asset. And we'll talk a little bit more, and Bill will probably talk about that community asset. And it's a public city-owned property, what that asset meant to us. And that asset was really also a very beautiful green space for the community. As some of you, and you drive through it, and some of us who have been lucky enough to get onto the golf course see what a nice and beautiful place it is to have. And the third was to hold city government accountable to being open, fair, and transparent. And I mean, who doesn't want that? Those were our goals for the coalition. And so these people were in this fight, and they stayed together for, 5 years really, that it went about before we got some information. But we sent letters. I mean, they weren't prior. We sent letters, we wrote press releases, we contacted council members, had meetings. One of the things that was interesting to us is that not only were we fighting City Hall, but we were also fighting a lot of the local newspapers or rags that come out, because they were saying that we were against development. We were fighting these jobs that would come to the community. And that was really is a bunch of hooey, because from the records we did find out that what the city and the newspapers putting out, that this was going to, what we were demonstrating against, that what a great boon to the city. Really, it was a gift. They were gifting El Rio, not selling, but gifting El Rio to GCU, and as you've heard, a for-profit religious organization that discriminated against the LGBT community. So, and these high-paying jobs, no, there were no high-paying jobs because the campus that GCU proposed was really going to be online learning, as is most of the universities and some are going to. So there really wouldn't be student dorms and things, or, you know, activities or gyms or things like that. They were really going to tie into the facilities that were already at Murrieta. And what was being proposed was commercial development, high-rise development, high-rise residential development. Now, the commercial development that supposedly was going to, you know, really jobs here in this community, the local business community here in this area would really be hit hard because they were planning like other commercial, you know, what are they called? Yeah, those kind of programs that would take away from the panaderia, from the tortilleria, from the stores and things that we have on Grande. So really, it was not. It was just fabricated. So we learned some from the records request. I did file a records request, and the first batch was about like 12 pages or so. And it was, and I'm gonna now lead into Bill. So we got the records request. I'm thinking, okay, God, so I opened it up, and I had taken another person with me so we could see through these things. And I was like, well, it really doesn't tell us anything. So if I take this, am I now saying that's it? So that's when called Mr. Risner and said, hey, Bill, I'm over at City Hall, and they're giving me this stuff, and I don't want to take it because I feel like if I take it, then they say we gave you the records. It isn't the records. There isn't the records. So, I mean, it was incredible, but yeah, one of the main things I think that we really found out was that we had been lied to. We were being sold a bag of goods, and that our council member was par and parcel of the negotiating that was being done back in January when she was telling us that this was completing the dream. So those were some things that we learned, and among the other things, and Bill can get into it because he really knows the details of what they were proposing as the price of El Rio. One of the things that, again, it has a great value, and we all know it, but one of the members of the coalition, Joan Leonetti, got an arborist from the University of Arizona to just look at the trees and the habitat, and that he valued that, just the trees alone, at $6 million. And so it has infrastructure. So anybody that was going to develop in it, it was prime land for them. And yet they were kind of selling it off at vacant, undeveloped land. So to lower the price. But Bill will go into that even more. I know he will. But so, you know, as Sal has stated in the presentation of how do you keep this momentum going? How do you keep people interested in this? One of the things that we did was we held a public educational forum that was really well attended, where communities that were part of the coalition and other communities could come and get the information that we had about El Rio and what was happening, but also present their issues and share their issues and concerns with other members so that the community as a whole is informed of what's going on. And that was a really positive thing, that forum. The other one was the walk on the green space. A walk that we did, we got to open up the golf course and invited people to come and see this space. Come and look at what the city's trying to give away. This is your space. And I know that people, once they walked, they saw it, they began to get that ownership feeling of, yeah, this is a nice place. And that has come along, also has developed, where I don't know, some of you I've seen over at the clubhouse now. The clubhouse is no longer a private clubhouse. It is now a public space where we can go. I go in there, have breakfast, I have meetings there. Some of us go to the monthly dance and music stuff and the open mic, and that's the way it should be. I mean, if there's any gratifying thing that developed from all of this, is that that I tell my kids, I can't see you tonight because I'm going dancing at the clubhouse. And you know, it's great to be able to do that, and I hope that it remains like that for all of us to enjoy and for our kids to be able to walk in this green space. So thank you, and Bill.
You know, we have a few minutes of a court proceeding, and it's, but I wanted to say a couple things before I describe that. Since I was a lawyer around 50 years ago, and Sal talked about being arrested and you saw a lot of cops, there was definitely a heavy hand. They arrested people that were doing nothing, charged them with inciting riots, you know, that whole thing. And they did something unusual that I haven't seen since, is the county attorney's office got a judge, Richard Royalston, to hear and act as what they called a one-man grand jury, to bring in people to investigate who, you know, broke a window at the place, who did this, to try to break up the movement with the heavy hand. And my partner, Mark Raven, and Peter Axelrod, at that time, the two of them stopped that while the rest of us were dealing with other court stuff. In any event, back to 50 years later, the public records, you know, lawsuits involve, you know, you say, I want those public records. It's a simple law in Arizona. You go in 8 to 5, say, I want to see it. They're supposed to bring it out, and you see it. It's that simple. You want copies of stuff, you get copies. But it's not part of the case that you have to say why you want something. You don't explain to the judge what's going on. It has nothing to do with that. They stop you from saying that, you know. In this case, Judge Starring could see that they were lying to him, they were hiding documents, they were doing all this stuff. And of course, he wanted to be on the Court of Appeals, which is where he is now. So he's kind of wondering, you know, what's going on? And which is, like I say, they never asked that, and I was happy to answer him. So to give a little background, we have a few minutes asking the question and giving him an answer.
So what do you think there's been the delay? Since you're ascribing it to intentional misconduct, why do you think that's the case?
Why is it misconduct?
Yeah, why? I mean, you are ascribing to the city of Tucson and to Mr. McLaughlin and to others intentional misconduct.
Yeah.
And I assume that a lawyer of your experience doesn't do that lightly, so why don't you tell me why you think that's the case?
This proposal to sell the only covered never sold was a massive crime in progress. The land is worth probably $75 million to $100 million. They had an appraisal where the city, Mr. Albert Elias at the meeting, one of the exhibits here, where they knew to arrive at the price at the highest level. Elias and Gottschalk are at a meeting. They decided in his handwriting $3 to $4.50 a square foot. The next day, then the Casalenas goes to the office of the city real estate guy and says, we need an appraisal. The city has a process. They don't follow it. The appraiser is told, here's and we have the handwritten notes as to what comps to look at. And we suggest you look at a comp that's 350, something like that, and it comes back and they pick the lowest value. And not only do they pick the lowest value, when you do the numbers ultimately, that the city has a rule you can't offer a lease more than 5 years. And in 5 years, there's $7.3 million in taxes that aren't going to be paid. They offer a 50-year lease, which is $73 million plus in taxes that won't be paid. This property, the city, at the same time, they say we want to buy you for just plain dirt. There's pages of documents where the city says to grant, it's the greatest stuff ever. This more than 114 acres, but 101 they wanted to sell, is more than downtown Tucson itself. It's a tremendous piece of property. The school was going to use for their buildings maybe 8 acres, maybe 20 would be the most. And yet this was a whole 100-acre thing. It was a tremendous real estate development of a tremendously valuable piece of property, and the city cooperated in seeing that false information came in when they hired a woman in Phoenix to get certain numbers on how many students and with those who live in dorms. She candidly said the records show that there are very few students living there.
That's at this BCAS deposition, I think.
Well, I'm not sure. I think Casalemas went into that originally.
The number was changed.
Yeah, and the city says, and then she come back, she says, look, I'm changing it from 20% to 80%, and that's a big number, and that changes the numbers. And and I'm doing it on these other facts. When you look at everything down the line, all of those things, I look at the whole record and see what's there. And what's there was a massive violation of public policy. What's there was a huge heist in progress by individuals, each of whom has been promoted since then. And what's the roles of public people and public records? It's fair. It's a fair role. It's our system that we get to look at these things and find out who was doing what's going on in terms of the public business. That's what's gone on in this case. That's why they're hiding. That's why the city attorney stepped in to get these records and to deep sex them, and they played the system like a harp. You asked the question, that's the answer.
No, I asked the question, you gave it to me.
Okay.
All right.
That's what they get for asking, right, Bill?
Right. I'm not, in my profession, worked as a real estate lawyer. I did get a college degree in real estate. I went to graduate business school, and I took appraising courses. And the details, and we didn't find them all, but we found out a lot, again and again and again, by pressing, filing new motions for new trial, new stuff to get information. But the 114 acres here, the Grand Canyon was talking about them taking 101 acres. I think there were some acres that were going to be used connected with Joaquin Murrieta Park to put in some soccer fields, which the college would get to use, but the city would pay for it. An acre is 43,560 square feet. So 100 acres is 4,360,000, whatever. I sold, I had a little lot in the barrio, and I think I sold it for $25 an acre. The city has rules on selling property, as you'd think. They have directives by the city. To sell something over $50,000, they need 2 appraisals. And their rules say those appraisals are reviewed by their hired appraisal review person to see that they did it right. So here, for this crime in progress, no appraisal. They could not get, I'm sure that's why, they could not get an appraiser who would actually appraise it the way that they wanted. Because an appraiser has to follow rules that are the same here in every state all across the nation. There's simple appraisal rules if you want to know market value. So what the city did was request something that appraisers can do, which is a hypothetical appraisal. Say, just hypothetically, let's say that I wanted to do this, wanted to do something that, what would that be worth at the end? So appraisers can do that, and they can do it for a piece of property if it's labeled as a hypothetical appraisal, if they explain that this is limited, and if their work papers have real stuff that they looked in, they can do that. So what the city did was say, we want an appraisal as if this was plain dirt. And we, of course, are offering Grand Canyon, ultimately, a planned area development, which is special, where you can have high-rises, shopping centers, all that stuff. When you go to Speedway and Park next to the university, all that stuff, planned area development. Of course, if someone's doing a appraisal, you look at the zoning, you look at potentially what you can do, you look at all of that stuff. So the city then, as you saw there, what happened is Albert Elias was a key guy working on the city thing. And when he ultimately claimed to have the 5 votes to be city manager, some of us said, you appoint that guy city manager, we'll recall all of you. And Albert Elias, I asked him, when you looked at this property, did you ever consider the value of that property to the community? No. I asked him, did you ever consider the historical value of that property? And the city attorney says, I direct him not to answer that question during a deposition. Any event, as we mentioned, it was nice to have us email with his handwriting, $3.50 before they asked something. They asked Hector Martinez to find an appraiser, and then they told the appraiser, here's a comp, what used to be off the main street drive-in theater. They said, let's use that as a comp. And then they came back and he gave them, $3.50 to $4.50. So the range, and then the city takes the lowest range. And then the city, which was like 12 million something, and then the city said, well, but you won't have to pay that. You can, we'll figure out what would be a reasonable, rental for that property, so much per month. So you can pay that for a month for a while. And in fact, as I mentioned, the city offered Grand Canyon. It's a letter from our from the city manager, but the offer was to keep the title to the property in city hands, so it wouldn't there wouldn't be taxes on it. And as I mentioned, the city got a rule, they can't do that for more than 5 years. So they said, well, we'll give it, you can do it for 50 years, and then we'll extend that period of time. So all of that time, they can have their planned area development up, but the dirt, the land underneath would not be taxable. And so that's where that 73 million come from. If you take, you know, that 4 million that I was talking about before at the value of what that property should be, and the city, it's important to know that they knew all of this. The city manager, in his letter to Grand Canyon, says this is an incredible piece of property. There's nothing like this. It's near I-10. It's near St. Mary's. It's near the university. There's shopping. There's all the stuff that developers look for. This is it. It's bigger than downtown Tucson in that central area. This was an incredible prize that they were breaking all the rules to offer. And the directions to the staff, it was, I had mentioned one thing that was pretty astonishing. Well, instantly, Tina Pacheco, whose name I mentioned, did great work. And one of the things that Tina dug up was Grand Canyon is kind of a, you know, a stock gig. It's a private company, right? So guys that had made a whole bunch of money with University of Phoenix, I think this guy got 23 million when he quit. They bought this little Christian college and said, we're gonna make you know, big thing out of it. And they're trying to pump the stock. So every once in a while, there's certain guys in Wall Street that follow the business model. How things going? What are your plans for the future? What's the profit? You know, that kind of stuff. So they're telling Wall Street, hey, we're going to make a bunch of money. We have really high profits. And in Tucson, we're not going to be building dorms. We're not going to have many employees, any of that stuff. City Council, they're telling them it's going to be 1,000 people working there. They're going to make so much per year, each of those.
60,000.
Yeah, and 1,000 people making all of that, and boy, all this dorms and stuff. And of course, they tell them, well, so, we're not going to have dorms. You know, it's and one of the. It's around the same time the United States Senate did a report on this kind of colleges and a whole section on Grand Canyon that talked about how sleazy they were and their business model. And in depositions, the city said, yeah, we knew about that report. But meanwhile, they hired then someone in Phoenix to do an economic analysis, so, you know, with all this people and high salaries, what's this going to do? And, you know, that's when a woman comes back and says, well, you know, they actually have very few students that are going to stay there. I mean, most of these students come out of Christian schools in Tucson, stuff like that. But they'll live at home. They're not going to, you know, live in dorms and stuff like that. So she comes up, but the numbers weren't good enough. So staff directs her, get higher numbers, and to get them here, talk to the head of Grand Canyon. He'll tell you what numbers to use. So she talks to that guy, comes back and says, look, I've changed this to 80% will live on the property. And she said, I want you to know that really changes the numbers. You know, the city staff guy, Castellini, said, hey, that's great, man. You know, thanks for getting us those big numbers. We need it to sell this thing. So we had to fight every step. The city would absolutely lie. The first time we were in court, the lawyer, Dennis McLaughlin, tells the judge, he says, Judge, there's nothing, we've turned over everything.
All 12 pages.
He says, we have here in this envelope 7 documents that we're fighting over. And as far as the city's concerned, You can just read them if they're public records, you know. The city, we know, hid all kinds of records. We have proof of that. They gave us 3,500 records after that event. But at the first thing they do is lie to the judge, and it's a show. You know, one of those documents, they said, look at this is something we got. And it was related to, I think, Oro Valley. Well, where'd you get that? Well, actually, later we find out there was a public report. They tore a page out, put it in. It's just theater. And of course, lying, you know, if I lie to a court, I'm disbarred. He lies to a court, he was promoted. Everyone in this case involved was promoted for their efforts. And what the things that we found out for sure was, of course, all the lying and hiding. And you know, one of the things, I'm circling back to that deal, they were telling the Grand Canyon, well, you can pay, you know, $230,000, whatever the number was, a year rent. But you can lock in the sale price now, and any rent payments can go to that, but title still, you know, still stays in us. So you get credit for that, for the ultimate purchase. And what the city's really good at, and is a specialty of the city attorney, is the gift clause, because they're not allowed to give stuff away. It is part of the Constitution. So these guys are masters on what can we say to offset things. So of course, Grand Canyon says, hey, we'll have a walking trail around. Great, walking trail, that's so many million. Thanks. So we'll take that off the purchase price. You know, they had a clause in it saying, you know, as this development goes, if there's unexpected problems that cost more, then we'll consider reducing, you know, the price further. Of course, part of the deal was for your planned area development, and when these buildings and stuff go up, you know, you'll have to pay for permits and things like that, so we'll reduce those from the sale price. That's why when I looked at the amount of, well, there was something like, that was worth like 2.1 million on cutting off those things. When I looked at what they really would be paying, it was almost nothing. It was almost that they were giving it away. And it's true that there's never been known a piece of public property that's been used by the city of Tucson that's sold. I think you asked that question, didn't you, of the city? And they couldn't come up with one, could they? And they knew what an incredible piece of property this was. They knew that there was a shortage of green space on the west side. It's in the manager's letter. It's like one of the problems we're going to have working this deal through is there is a shortage of green space, and we're giving you the main one for virtually, you know, nothing. And what we never did learn, which was really the question that the judge asked, and I think some of us could probably give you a pretty good answer, but what we never learned was who was really behind this thing. You know, we had the first meeting, and it's sort of the way they do this stuff too, you know. Trio is the one that comes up with this thing, and I think it's called Sun something now. It's a quarter. I don't know you people are familiar with what Trio is, but it's an interesting group. They're private guys that make money that pretend that they're like an agency or something. But what Trio does is have a client. So Grand Canyon can be like the client there. And the city doesn't know anything about Trio's money relationship with that client. There are no conflict of interest laws that apply. Trio claims that public records doesn't apply to them. I've sent them requests. We're private.
Doesn't the mayor sit on Trio?
Yes.
Oh yeah, everybody's there. So, and then of course, Grand Canyon will have a lawyer. And of course, the fee agreement is not public. Nobody knows who gets a piece of whatever gifts are given, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the first meeting then is over at Trio's office. We have this Grand Canyon, and it's a great deal. Boy, 1,000 jobs, but there's competition. Grand Canyon may go to Albuquerque, or they may go to Las Vegas. We want to win this competition, you know. So the mayor gets back to us. Okay, come on, this is great for Tucson. Let's win this competition. The one thing that was never seen in any of the documents was any suggestion of if Grand Canyon University was here, how much land would they actually use? You know, that's why, I mean, I think I told it it's 5, possibly 20 if they want to keep all the, you know, bunch of trees. Who knows what they would, that would leave 80 for their shopping centers and condos and high-rise development. At the first meeting there was Don Diamond's main guy in terms of their mass-heavy development. But oddly enough, the Don and his guys' names are never anywhere else. We don't know who was behind what was going on. But it is a travesty of the highest order that the city would direct employees who would go along with breaking all the rules. The mayor and council were fully aware of our lawsuit and the hiding of public records. I later filed an abuse of process lawsuit, which the courts, you know, helped them out with. But again, in videotape depositions, the city manager, the city clerk said we had a direction at an executive meeting by the city council to not follow our regular rules, but to turn this over to the city attorney's office for their responses.
Just wanted to, on what you were saying about losing and deep sixing files. Through some communications and emails that we were able to piece together, the main folder, the main meat was called Project 1. And so that was the title that they gave to this project. We were searching, or we gave them El Rio, GCU, other names for information. Of course, Project 1 never kind of surfaced, or we didn't know. They lost the original file, but we found out they had a duplicate file. Somehow that one disappeared too. And then when we asked for email information from people, it was very scattered. But the most important one would have come from Ward 1, right? The Regina Romero's office. Oh, her computer mysteriously disappeared.
That's right.
And it was kind of, we got some comments that it had to be an inside job because nothing else was stolen and there wasn't a break-in.
Right.
So.
And the alarm didn't go off.
And the alarm didn't go off.
We know, some of us have worked in Ward 1, we know there's an alarm there.
Right,
We know
and been to meetings. So I just wanted to mention that of how much effort went into hiding the information from us.
Another real takeaway is no matter what we would come up with, I don't think you saw a word of that in the Tucson newspapers. Our press does not cover this. That's the way it is. And all of us as citizens, you need to really take a couple lessons. One is the corruption is deep, and it's up to all of us, because never ever will that Arizona Daily Star print or cover any of this stuff. That's the way it is. And I've sent them information, I've given them information, we have transcripts, we have everything. Nothing. And I have the same experience on rigging elections in this city. Never will they print it. That's it.
I just want to say in terms of the press, we have some from the press here, that I appreciate they're here because they have ignored us. The Weekly and the Star ignored us to the point where we held a press conference right in front of the Arizona Daily Star office, and they still wouldn't come. Right in front of our office.
We talked ourselves.
That's right. But I want to leave room for questions and discussion. I think one of the things that Bill brought that we want to raise to people who, not only in our neighborhood and what we went through, but what else is the city doing? If they did this here, how many other deals are going on downtown? How many other deals are going on that are affecting other neighborhoods that we don't know about because of the lack of transparency and because of backroom deals? This one shows how they operate. I mean, that's the beauty of the multi-year fight of getting the records, so we could actually get at least a clue. Again, they didn't give us all the records. They disappeared. The city attorney's office lost the records. I mean, come on. But anyway, I think what was revealed shows how corrupt it is, and it's something that, this is it's not just like, hey, we fought this and we stopped them, but there's lessons that I think other people need to learn about what happened here. So that's why we're doing this.
I hate to take us extra time, but you mentioned something about the city attorney losing records. The city attorney who was working on the records with the staff guy in front of the project, this guy Casalima, city attorney, testified about how he sat down with him and said, look, I want to make sure that I have all the records in your file, your hard file. So let's go through that. So okay, that you've got that? Yeah, I've got that copy here. Okay, this one, yeah, I've got that. I've got that, yep. I have all of it. Okay, thanks. Give me both of them. And he said, I can't find them. I lost them. What can you do?
Oh, I just want to say that we have a great debt that we owe to Bill. He's been there to the fight for many causes, and without him, we wouldn't have had this fight. He took on the case. He stayed with it for 5 years, winning, fighting, and winning, and we did. With Bill, we won all the hearings or the case 5 times. 5 times that was told that the city lied and to give us records, and they kept it up. And that's what the city will do. It realizes that citizens don't have money to pay for an attorney. They have attorneys that they call and can paid on staff that can show up. And meanwhile, if you don't have an attorney like Bill, you're stacking up money and money. I mean, this thing costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Bill was compensated after winning all these for a pittance of what he should have been paid. And that's, again, those same judges that are promoted up and have been working for the city and government that are ruling on cases and what damages or what your expense really is, not what to pay what the work that Bill did. So thank you, Bill.
In that line about lawyers, I recall a certain county administrator saying one time during a conflict with some residents, he said, we pay our lawyers with taxpayer money. And that's their attitude. We can withstand whatever the people bring up because the taxpayers pay for our lawyer fees. And that's what they try to do. That's why they dragged this out and dragged it out. They refused to give us documents that we were legally allowed to have. So, you know, in terms of lessons, yeah, we need to keep Bill alive for another 50 years and find out what.
Yeah, and that's a point I want to make very clear. A public records request in Arizona should not take a lawsuit.
Right.
Every single one of us as citizens has a right to request information from our public officials. And like was stated before, we should be able to just walk in, ask for the information, and get it. It should not take more than a day or two unless it's tons of information. If it does, we should be notified. It should certainly not take a legal case to get that information, and it certainly shouldn't have taken 5 years.
Right.
So
And
they were banking on us just giving up, and it didn't work.
But Arizona is a very conservative state, except when it comes to the public records law. It's super good. It's ARS 39-121.
But
Yeah, it's
if
a
your
very
officials don't
simple
give it and they fight you, that's the way they leverage that they have to fight you. And if your public officials and your public elected officials stonewall you, feed you lies, like our council member Rahina from Warren 1 did, that really, I mean, she could have come clean way back when and said, maybe I made a mistake, or yes, I'm involved with DCU, whatever, nothing. And even with Trio, one of the things that Bill mentioned about Trio working with the city, so we met with the mayor and council and also with Rahina, people saying, they said, no, we can't talk about it. This was in May, because we have non-disclosure agreements between, for not to speak on the DCU item in El Rio, in May. This is in May. Now, find out through the few records that we got, the disclosure or the agreements were opened up and just said, it's okay, we don't have these anymore. Back in, was it? January, back in January. Yeah, so I mean, you know, it's still the lying that goes on. So, you know.
This is just one time they got caught.
Well, but look how long, I mean, how long? Those of us who were involved with it for 5 years. 5 years.